Ah, the call to adventure. How universal and so widespread amongst humankind. That yearning to journey to far off places. To see what you've never seen before, to experience what you've never experienced before. To be renewed, to become someone else, to transform yourself, to expand your horizons, broaden your horizons. Oh, the fantasies I would have staring off into the horizon, into the ocean. For the moment, I was stuck in a dead-end job in my hometown. Early 30s, wanting to branch out and bust out and just have my own life, have my own mission, have my own purpose, have my own destiny. Seemed like almost every single evening when the sun would set, I would go out to the shore, to the beach, and just fantasize about what the next day would bring. They say the journey of the soul is not something that could be taught or expressed, but something that has to be experienced. And eventually, my personal experience took an unexpected turn. I was driving home from work one evening when I received a text message from my buddy Mike. He was wanting to hang out for the weekend, and it being a Wednesday, almost a Thursday, it had nothing to do, planned out, or anything to do, really, and I decided I was going to oblige him. We hadn't been fishing together in a while, and apparently there was a good movement of salmon during the season. Our winter had been unusually warm, and the fish were moving around, really active still, so we agreed. I pulled up into my driveway and opened my front door. I go into my living room, go into my leather chair and begin reading. Suddenly I can see a picture in my head. Picture of this ship. An enormous wooden ship. It's being illuminated by flames. I look up to see a heinous dragon's head at the bow of the ship. I wake up. I shake myself a little bit, nod myself back into consciousness, and realize that I'd been dreaming. Never had a dream like that before. Of a ship. Big dragon ship. What the hell was I dreaming of a Viking ship for? I wondered to myself. Interestingly enough, I just happened to possess some of the Norse epics and legends, and I began reading from those. A while passed by, and it was getting late, so I decided to turn in. Next morning I woke up, went to work, went about my business. It was odd because I'd been thinking to myself about my buddy Elsa all day. I hadn't heard from her in a few days, and usually she's really keen on contacting me and keeping in touch with me. Went to work, went about my business, and decided to call Elsa up, but she didn't answer. I left a voicemail and texted her asking if she was alright. Several hours went by and there was no reply. For some reason, I got the feeling that I should drive over to her house. I'd never gotten that hunch and that feeling in my gut before, but I decided to follow it and went about my way over there. As soon as I got to the place, it was surrounded by police cars, crime scene tape, and about a dozen or so people out on the street outside looking at the house. God, I whispered to myself. I parked on the side of the street and walked over. I went to one of the officers and asked what had happened, and he just shook his head silently. "Afraid I can't tell you that," he whispered. "Officer, what are you talking about? What happened?" "But you don't want to know," he said in a sheepish voice. I looked at him, puzzled. A crew of ambulance came out of the front door with a stretcher with a sheet covered over it. There was actually a bit of blood that was starting to soak through the white sheet, and I could see the feminine hand coming from underneath the white sheet. There was blood dripping from the hand. Shocked, I stared at the stretcher and the paramedics and then back at the police officer. "Elsa?" I called out. I began to move in her direction, but the policeman grabbed me. He shook his head once more. "No," he whispered. I shook my head, let out a very harsh exhale. "Any suspects?" I whispered. "We're doing our best right now. We're trying to keep it quiet. But as of yet, not yet, no." God. Shook my head. "Were you close to her?" he asked. "Yeah, friend, yeah. We'd known each other for a while." He nodded. Spent my time there for a little longer and went back to my house. The next day I was actually summoned to the police station for questioning after work. The detective ran me through a gauntlet of questions: where I was, what I was doing, working and going home. I was honest and calm, cordial. They asked all they needed to ask and let me loose and let me free. Got back to my house and began to read once more, but heard a frantic knocking at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone tonight at this hour, and I heard her knocking again. Again. Terry, open up. It's me, Mike. I went to my front door and looked through the people, and sure enough, it was Mike. So I let him in. Hey man, is it okay if I could stay here for a little bit? Sure, Mike. What's the problem? He shook his head. It's Gwen. What are you talking about? What about Gwen? I found her at her place and she was... She was what, Mike? He slashed his throat, making a hand signal. Are you serious? Yeah. I turned on the news. Reports of a young Gwen Taylor being brutally murdered with an axe. It was all over the station. Jesus! I turned to Mike. That's how Elsa died. Yeah. I reported to the police and they arrived. They questioned me and they let me go. Oh, that's funny. They just questioned me earlier today as well. For what happened to Elsa. Jesus, Mike, what the hell is going on? I don't know, Terry. Looks like we got an axe murderer on our hands. It looks that way, doesn't it? The man was still shaking. He was so uneasy. Wait, you're the one that found the He nodded silently. Jesus, man, I'm so sorry. Yeah, no, me too. Hey, you need something to drink? You look... You're very on edge right now, Mike. You need to sit down. He nodded. I made some hot cocoa for us, and we chat the shit for a little bit. To help get the murder off of his mind, I started talking to Mike about fishing and if he still wanted to do something about it this weekend. I don't know, man. I'm just really shook up about this. It's just... Yeah, I know I would be too. Hell, it's traumatic just finding out anyone that you knew was murdered, let alone your own girlfriend. Jesus, that's crazy. Yeah, man. Just what possesses someone to do something like that? He said, shaking his head and rubbing his eyes. I don't know, man. That's a totally different monster right there. That's a totally different animal. That's just a state of being that 99.999% of people have no understanding of, or God, I'm sorry, man. He nodded. He crashed on the couch and I went to my bedroom and read for a little bit and fell asleep. Over the dark horizon, I could hear drums. war drums. Loud war drums. Banging. Roaring. Thundering war drums. Flames. The head of the dragon ship. The bow of the dragon ship once more, venturing closer and closer to me. I wake up once more. It's very rare that I have a dream or a nightmare about something repeatedly, but if at all, but this time this was different. This was something that was just felt like an omen or a sign or a vision than your basic dream. I rub my eyes and try to make sense of what I was witnessing. Eventually I fall back to sleep and I wake up again in the morning. I open my door and begin to head to the kitchen to make myself and Mike some breakfast, but just then I stop in my tracks. I'm stone cold, frozen, with fear and shock. I see Mike's decapitated body lying still on my couch, blood dripping everywhere on the couch and onto the floor. Just then I have a look around my house. My body's completely still, but my eyes are moving around frantically. Okay, no sign of. Then I muster up the courage to. I grab a knife out of the kitchen. I muster up the courage to inspect my house. I check all the doors and the windows. No sign of forced entry. Everything was still locked up and none of the windows were busted through. There was no murder weapon in Mike's hand, and judging from the wound, it seemed like his head was just whacked off with one swoop. Rather than sliced through with a knife, it was just whacked off. That's what it appeared like to me, at least. See, the vertebrae bone even was hacked. Jesus. Panic-stricken, I called 911 and called for the police. They arrived as well as the paramedics. They took me in for questioning once again, and boy, was it a questioning. Almost an interrogation, even. As if I was the prime suspect. They held me. Although there was no murder weapon proving that I did it, because the death was caused by a large axe, which was something that I didn't have in my possession, even though it was in my house and even though there was no sign of forced entry. This one had the detectives and the police stumped. They weren't sure what to make of it. I was held for a couple days and set free again. The police were overwhelmed. They had no idea what to make of all these murders. Still, I can hear the war drums beating in the distance. Those war drums beating in the distance. Beating and beating. I no longer had to be asleep or dreaming to hear them. They just kept beating and beating and beating. One night I get back from work and hear over the radio that there had been a mass amount of people that were murdered the past evening. Including a big, massive kill-off at the police station. Nearly every single officer in the city was dismembered, hacked with an axe. I shake. I quiver. I don't know what to do. I go home and I get my 12 gauge out of my gun safe. I flip on the news and there's 20 more deaths. People hacked to pieces with an axe. Start to hear the wind howl from outside. Turn on the weather report and there's a storm system coming through. Not quite a nor'easter, but pretty nasty low pressure system. It was in the high 40s, but the only thing that was almost as bad as ice and thick snow was, of course, cold rain and wind. The storm raged. Wind howled and gusted. Thunder and lightning struck, and after a couple hours, it began to die down. The rain died down, but the wind was still howling. After a while, at around midnight or so, I could hear a knocking at my door. It was odd because I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was late at night. I had my shotgun by my side, and I wasn't fixing to let anyone have the upper hand. Especially with the mass murder on the loose. I hear another knocking at the door, but I don't answer. Then I hear a booming crunch. Wood splinters off and something thin moves itself from the front door. Then another crashing crunch at the door. Can't make out this primitive type of metal slicing through. Then another crunch. I raise my shotgun. Stop now, I'm armed. If you strike my door one more time, I'll shoot. A sudden explosion at the door. Large, heavy front door just erupts into pieces. Revealing this figure. This dark figure. Cloaked in an animal skin. That encompassed its body. The figure begins to walk through the threshold slowly. Red eyes peeking from a dark crevice under the animal skin. It appeared that the skin was just one continuous hide, dark brown, almost black. The dark figure was carrying an axe in its right hand, an enormous axe. The figure was huge, maybe 6'4", 6'5", broad-shouldered, an immense man. Or was this even a man? Couldn't see any discernible color, just a black figure in an animal skin, with red eyes. Suddenly the figure launched a spear at me. The blade of the spear striking the wall just behind me, inches above my head. I raise the shotgun and I fire. Once, twice. Unload all the slugs out the 12 gauge and the figure just keeps coming forward, grasping its axe. It raises its weapon, ready to deal a death blow to me. Just as the axe rains down, I move slightly and roll. Just as the axe blade hits the couch, I race past the dark figure. He reaches out with his left arm, but misses me as I duck down. I run out of my house, get into my car, and as I start it up, the figure begins to walk through the threshold of the house. The figure is solid black. Underneath the bare skin, the black eyes, the red eyes, piercing through my car headlights, the enormous axe. Dripped in blood, stained with blood. Jesus, I whisper. As quickly as I could, I back out and I race away. I contemplate where to go. I think about where to go. My mind's racing. The war drums begin to play once again, banging in my head. Look in my rear view, and sure enough, there was no one following. raced into town, and rattled on the freeway by the ocean. Then I noticed the red eyes in my rearview mirror. I don't have a convertible. It's how did the red eyes are in my back seat. I turn to look, and the fiend is there, staring at me. Raises his axe and attempts to take another death swing at me. I duck as the axe blade fires through the car and through the front window, the side driver's window. The blade crashes, busting the glass. Just then I slam the brakes and I take out the ignition. I run as fast as I can. I run and I run and I run. Run several hundred yards and finally make it to the outskirts of the town. The war drums continue to beat. I look for someone, anyone, but no one's around. Then I begin to see mangled bodies on the sidewalk. Hacked up bodies. Then I begin to see something on the horizon. It's almost pitch black, but the ocean reveals a dragon ship in the distance, coming for the shore. Then I see the figure walking patiently toward me. I run and I run. Try running to the police station to see if there's any remaining officers, but no one's there. The town is completely deserted. The figure continues to move toward me, war drums beating. Suddenly, I can't move. I drop to my knees and the figure has me right where he wants me. I lock eyes with the fiend. The fiend tilts its head, staring at me. Pulls back its axe and swings down. Miraculously, the blade stops about an inch or so from my head. The figure removes the blade from my face and continues to look at me. Tilts its head back and forth. Then the monster hands me its weapon. It gives the axe to me. And it begins to walk away. I'm completely puzzled and dumbfounded. What? Look at the gorgeous axe. Different carvings. Artwork, almost like a medieval tapestry, but with mythological figures. Viking and Norse lore. I stand up and I raise the weapon. I begin to charge toward the figure and I swing with all my might, but as I swing into him, he disappears. I turn around and look around frantically. The hell did he go? I screamed. Just then I looked toward the ocean. As I began to see the dragon ship sail away. The mighty vessel lit up in the night from flickers of lightning, never to return back to our shore again.